What's going on, everyone? Hopefully everybody's doing all right. I know you guys are muted, so I'm probably not going to be able to hear you at this moment, but we'll have room for conversation later. So what we're going to do for this presentation is we're going to spend about the first half. It's just going to be a straightforward presentation. I'm going to come with different facts, statistics, ideas, theories, things of that nature. And basically, I'm just going to provide you information for you to process and for you to intake. And then in doing that, we're basically going to do two breakout sessions. The first breakout session is going to be in groups. So everybody's going to be in a group, whatever the group you're assigned in. Basically, you guys will talk about the question that I will give you at the end. And then there will be a leader in that group. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to it. And then the second half is everybody basically comes back from their group. The leader of those groups is basically going to report back on behalf of everybody. But again, it's definitely a pleasure. I'm super honored to even be a speaker over here in Course Hero, because for me, I'm like, man, you know, I'm just really trying to see how I can impact the space of education, you know, being somebody from the Hispanic community, having grown up around Black and brown people for most of my life, you know, like I could understand both sides of things. You know, I could understand things from, you know, growing up in the environments, being exposed to the different elements and things of that nature, and then having gone to school, obtained my education, and then gotten some, I think, valuable work experience. It's all kind of put things into perspective. So I'm hoping to provide this information back to y'all, and you know, hopefully y'all can leave with something at the very end of the day, even if it's, you know, a rap performance and you remember at least like 2 bars that I spit or something like that. So let's get right into it. So I'm going to share the screen right here. The presentation itself is going to be a mixture of talking about civic engagement, and then how we can actually put those ideas and those thoughts into practice. So basically into actionable items. All right, so without further ado, this is Revolutionary Scholarship, the bond between social justice and the classroom experience. Again, very honored to collaborate with Course Hero to be a presenter on their education summit. I know this is a huge event, not just for Course Hero, but for educators in general, as I've gotten to learn a lot about the field of higher ed and education in general, and Course Hero is definitely at the top of the list in regards to what they do. So shout out to the Education Summit, meeting the moment. That's what it's all about. You know what I'm saying? Being in the moment so that we know how to move about in the future. So a brief intro was already given about me, but just to kind of give you a little more context, I have my master's in public administration. I graduated from NYU with my master's, but basically I teach criminal justice. My experience comes from being a case manager at the second largest halfway house company in New Jersey. And then also being a former program coordinator for the New York City Department of Corrections at Rikers Island. So I actually worked at 4 different facilities while I was at DOC, but I was at Rikers for at least half the time of the year that I had spent working for DOC. So what we're going to look to do is get into outcomes, kind of just breaking down what these actionable items are. That's basically going to be the overall result of this conversation and just getting into this presentation. But let's talk about revolution real quick. When we think about the term revolution, you might think of, you know, some kind of extremist, or, you know, it could be good extremism, or it could be extremism that can be volatile or potentially dangerous in the minds of different individuals. But when I'm referring to revolution, this is what I mean. In a time where social justice and Black and brown empowerment are needed now more than ever, this session seeks to impact the relationship between scholarship and how it can be used in motivating actionable items. Historically, it is the young who play an important role from one revolutionary cause to the next, whether it be a young Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Hampton, or Black Panther founder Huey P. Newton. The fight against injustice is often led by those with youthful vigor to do the work, as well as a level of scholarship and quote-unquote wokeness. So we're going to look to dive into some of these examples and some of the backdrops of some of our leaders in civil rights, and just in social justice in general. But at the end of the day, we want to create the connection between how this is applicable in the classroom. My prognosis of the whole social movement, students are often eager to get involved, but lack the foresight and guidance. This is where the classroom comes in. As educators, we will discuss different strategies on how to optimize the classroom experience and ways to empower student engagement in criminal justice reform, race-based policies, socioeconomics, and more. And as I mentioned before, basically, we're looking at two things: civic engagement and actionable items. Civic engagement is basically just having the conversation. How can we organize? What are the ways that we could boost morale and eventually land people in opportunities of employment where you're making your money, you're making your living, but at the same time, you're able to have a positive impact. And then, of course, actionable items, the specific nuanced things that we can do to improve the overall situation. So civic engagement, I describe it basically as developing dialogue, understanding, and action, right? In order for you to even put out an action, you have to have a thought, right? And the only way that you can have a specific thought or a concentrated thought is to get into conversation and dialogue. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail in the specifics. I'm pretty sure most of us are already aware of some of the events that have been happening in the country. So even before I get into the presentation, just out of a moment of respect, I want to take 10 seconds, moment of silence just for the people lost, you know, in this war, this racial war that, you know, has taken many lives. So we'll take 10 seconds as a moment of silence. So rest in power, George Floyd. You know, many of us seen the videos. We've seen the images. This was the Minneapolis police station. It was burnt. This was, to be honest, I've never seen an image like this in my life until this moment. But it's like they say, the reason why the straw broke the camel's back is because there were a million other straws underneath it. And when we talk about George Floyd, there's no way we could talk about his experience without talking about all the other kings and queens that we have lost throughout the process. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Sandra Bland, Khalif Browder, Mike Brown, Trayvon, and the list goes on and on. These are only just a small sample size. And at the bottom, I included Emmett Till and George Stinney. Both were unjustly murdered at the age of 14. To this day, we still mourn. We still mourn their deaths, and we'll never be able to forgive the actions. You know, hopefully we can forgive certain how do I put it? Certain parts of the past and history and try to move forward together. But certain actions are just, they can't just be left as is. We forgive the perpetrator or the individual that did it, but at the same time, we have to remember that action comes and stems from a certain ideology or a certain form of thinking. When it comes to police brutality, and we're going to get into a little backdrop first, because before we talk about the classroom, we have to talk about the issue as a whole, right? Why do we even have to talk about social justice in the classroom? This is an example right here. We learned about George Floyd. I'm pretty sure anybody who's an educator, the next time that they went to school or that they taught a class, students were probably talking about George Floyd, you know, Breonna Taylor, and all these protests that were happening. If we investigate or look deep into the history of law enforcement, specifically police in this country, the first form of policing in the United States were actually the slave patrol. Now, this is an oath directly taken from the National Law Enforcement Museum in DC. So this is what it states. I, patroller's name, do swear that I will, as a searcher for guns, swords, because he still has swords at the time, and other weapons among the slaves in my district, faithfully and as privately as I can, discharge the trust reposing me as the law directs to the best of my power. So help me God. So just the fact that there's an oath and they're including their faith and their belief in a higher power in it shows that this was a genuine belief that that there was nothing wrong with owning slaves and turning people into property. People of color are more likely to have police called on them. We've seen the videos of, you know, white women or people from the white community calling police on a black kid, or, you know, a black male or something of that nature, and then stating, I'm going to call the police and let them know that a black man is doing X, Y, and Z. For people like that, social media, look, one thing I've learned throughout my time on social media is that the internet is undefeated. People like that have earned the name, quote unquote, Karen. That's just what it is at this point. For the males, they're usually referred to as Ken. So listen, we're trying to be more cognizant and aware of, preventing people from Karening and kenning around, essentially, is the purpose of this. Or at least being able to identify it and addressing it in the best way possible. People of color are more likely to be stopped and frisked, have physical force used on them by police, be brutalized, potentially killed by police, even when no weapon is recovered, be convicted with stiffer sentencing, and be wrongfully convicted at that. When we talk about the term social justice, Oxford Dictionaries puts it like this: justice in the terms of distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. So there's three elements right there to consider: wealth, opportunity, and privilege. Why these different things? We usually think that it's only, an individual coming in contact with the police. We have to look deeper into the history of things. When police are put into certain areas, and let's say they're quote unquote high crime areas, oftentimes they're high crime areas, not necessarily because at the age of 5, an individual automatically decides I want to be a lifetime criminal, right? Or not because anybody's innately born necessarily a criminal. Those are habits and actions that you learn throughout the process of life. The reality is that not having opportunity, not having money and finances to be able to move around, to elevate yourself, to elevate your family, all of these things play a role in how a community develops. And not just for Black and brown communities, but even for white communities as well, because in reality, there's more people from the white community on welfare in this country than any other group. But percentage-wise, people of color suffer a lot more than in the white community. The reality is there's overwhelmingly more people representing the white community than there is Black and Hispanic combined. It's still a white majority country. And so when we talk about wealth, a lot of it, historically speaking, here in the United States has been ascertained through slave labor and things of that nature, regardless of what society wants to put out there. When we talk about wealth, this specifically means an abundance of valuable possessions or money. So now here's some facts in regards to wealth. 25% of white homes are lower income, compared with about 50% of each Black and Hispanic homes. White overall net worth is 13 times greater than the Black net worth. So you're talking about over $100,000, $144,000 plus dollars versus $11,000 plus dollars. That's not even a comparison, to be quite honest. And 72% of whites own their home, compared to 43% Black and 45% Hispanic. Now, you're talking about the Black population in the United States is between 11 and 13% of the overall population, but only less than half of the Black community owns their home. The white community makes up over 70%, and the rate of home ownership is just about accurate with that overall population number. So right there, we can automatically see that obviously some things are pretty much off. Opportunity, set of circumstances that make it possible to do something. So in order for you to have wealth, in order for you to have a home, you need to be able to get a job. And if you want to have a decent paying job, or a job that you can at least live comfortably by, more times than not, you're probably going to have to go to school or get qualified in a trade or something of that nature. 36% of white Americans 25 years old and up own bachelor's degrees, compared to 23% Black and 15% Hispanic. Now, this right here is a startling statistic when I picked this one up. 15% of high school graduates in the United States are Black, right? Out of all high school graduates in the United States, 15% are Black. But Princeton University and Cornell University each have a Black student population of 8%. So even though the overall US population of high school graduates is Black, these individual Ivy League schools each have a black student population of 8%. So even if a student wanted to go to an Ivy League or, you know, explore other options outside of the local state university or community college, they're going to be boxed out. And here are the statistics to prove it. And unemployment was 3.9% in 2018, but 6.5% for blacks and 4.7% for Hispanics. So for blacks and Hispanics, their rate of unemployment was higher than the overall national unemployment rate. And then when we talk about privilege, basically is a special right, advantage, or immunity granted. So a privilege, being safer from police brutality simply because of how you look. Better closure percentage on crimes committed against you. If you're white, you have a better chance of, if you're a victim of a crime, the police catching the offender than if you're black or Hispanic. You're going to receive more favorable sentences when convicted. Felicity Huffman, for example, she was bribing schools and universities and trying to get her child's SAT scores switched around, but there was a black mother in a different area here in the United States that she lied about her address so that her kid can go to a better school, and she ended up getting hit with several years of prison time. That's the America that we live in. Access to better health care. If you're a serial killer, you're going to be diagnosed as mentally ill instead of a thug in many cases. Your appearance / name, it won't affect your livelihood. Just in New York, within the last 2-3 years, they passed a law that you can't be discriminated against for having dreadlocks. The fact that that even has to be a law says everything. And black students are 3 times more likely than white students to get disciplined in school in the form of suspension or expulsion, and it could be for the same offense. And they often get punished a lot quicker or sooner. Why does this all matter? Why should I even care for this topic? Well, that's a valid question. My response to that would be what MLK said: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. For example, if we're talking about mental health in New York, 1 in 5 people have symptoms of mental health disorder. When somebody has a mental health disorder, this can lead to potential violence, marital issues, teen pregnancy, school failure, unstable work, and even suicide. Things that, generally speaking, most people probably wouldn't want to be involved around or be exposed to. Half of all lifetime cases begin by age 14, 3/4 begin by age 24. Now, the sum of all this on a nationwide level, because right here we're just breaking down New York, but if you want to break it down on a nationwide level, because mental health is an issue everywhere, over $200 billion are lost in earnings here in the United States. If you want to continue to dive deep into this mental health, you're talking about, you know, whatever the case, depression, suicidal ideations, you know, just impulsiveness or you know, whatever the individual is diagnosed with. These things could potentially lead, if you're a young person, right, going into high school and you're struggling with all these different issues, poor school performance and performing poorly in school, you could potentially decide to drop out, and dropping out, you might end up joining the streets, get involved with gangs, you know, in trying to receive validation, you're gonna have to jump somebody or assault somebody, and right there's violence. And in a lot of these cases, unfortunately, it could end up leading into a homicide. It could start off as a simple assault or whatever, and the next thing you know, things turn and change quickly, and it could become a homicide. And when we talk about the closure rate on murder, if there's murder involving a firearm for both white and communities of color, the closure rate, meaning the rate in which the crime is solved, is a lot lower than if the crime is committed without a firearm. But either way, in both cases, the closure rate for people of color is still less than for the white community. And if there is a firearm involved, it's significantly less than the white community. But at the end, what this number is showing, or what this line graph is showing, is that even if you are from the white community, there is still a 20%, you know, a window where basically the crime could not be solved if there is if there's no firearm involved. If there is a firearm involved, the likelihood of it not getting resolved is even greater, even if you do come from a certain community. If we look at Los Angeles in 2016, they made arrests for just 17% of gun assaults in 2016. Chicago, they had less than 12. San Francisco made arrests in just 15% of non-fatal shootings, and Boston, the figure was just 10%. So when we want to ignore these issues and say, oh, that's just a Black issue or that's a Hispanic issue, at some point or another, these issues are going to make their way into different parts of the country or the city or the state, especially in a place like New York City where there's a lot of traffic. Everybody's on the train. It don't even matter what your socioeconomic status is. Everybody's going to get on the train. And don't ever think it can't happen to you. You know, everybody and anybody is susceptible to some of these realities. And so that's why education is key, right? At one point, reading was illegal here in the United States, all right? Reading was illegal to slaves for a reason, because at the end of the day, education is the key to a lot of our issues. Learning about these situations and trying to address them, it definitely goes a long way. When we talk about one of my idols, or one of the people I look up to and that many people can point to in regards to just revolutionary leadership and scholarship, it will be Huey P. Newton. He is a co-founder of the Black Panther Party, and he earned his PhD later on in life, but he didn't start off that way. By the time that he was in his final year of high school, Huey P. was actually illiterate. He was told that he was not even college material. He was also told that his IQ was 74. He continually got in trouble with the law. But at some point after his final year in high school, he was able to get kind of at least ubicate himself a little bit and help himself out. Ultimately, this led to him being able to go to college. He got his associates, studied law, and eventually earned his PhD. Not only that, but he became an on-campus leader. So he became a member of different organizations. He actually helped institute the first Black history course in the college. He attended a speech by Malcolm X, and then he started to re-envision his own educational experience. So even though some of his teachers in high school were telling him he wasn't cut out for college and this and that, once he got to college, he started seeing himself as totally being able to fit into this environment. And of course, as a result, he ended up co-founding the Black Panther Party. He created the 10-point program, free breakfast to school children, clothing, shoe outlets, and clinics. And they even instituted an elementary school program and other programs on top of that. Now, Huey P. is just one example. Some of our other great civil rights activists and leaders have all went to school at some point or another. And a lot of the organizational skills that they had and just being able to get people together, they learned a lot of their philosophies and their way of speaking and their mannerisms from these different institutes. MLK, he went to Morehouse for his bachelor's, then he got his PhD in theology. Angela Davis, you know, she ended up getting her PhD in East Berlin. Stokely Carmichael, he went to Howard University, a historically Black college, and one of the, if not the mecca of historically Black colleges and universities. Gandhi, he studied law. Marcus Garvey went to school. Nelson Mandela, the first Black president of South Africa, he studied law as well. So school definitely plays a role in social justice and activism. Now that we have an understanding of that, I want to get into some of the actionable items. And this is how we implement social justice in the classroom. Number one, community. So the main thing before anything is our students have to feel like they actually are able to dialogue and that it's a safe space to dialogue. If they feel like they're going to get judged, if they feel like they're going to get attacked, forget it. You're not going to get to this part of the conversation peacefully. So it's important as an educator to know your absolutes. Disrespect of any form, racism, sexism, homophobia, whatever it is, we're not even discussing it. The moment that comes out, it's clipped. It's a dub. Pretty much that's what it is. When it comes to any of these types of behaviors, you want to have a process set in place. More times than not, you're not going to experience this, but you still always want to be prepared in the event that it may happen. And of course, you want to be impartial in your grading. Don't allow your personal views and the views of students that are conflicting with yours, you know, deter you from giving them the grade that they earned or deserved or whatever. Things like that, right? Those are absolutes. Students will have all types of views. Some are reflective of themselves, others reflective of their circles of influence. Whatever the case, be objective and remain respectful. So no sarcasm, no shade, things of that nature. And allow room for disagreement and dialogue. Allow students to express themselves, obviously within boundaries, but the classroom is a place for free thinking, right? Students, and this is my personal experience, I graduated from undergrad in 2014, so I'm not that far removed from my students. Students learn more from each other than their instructors sometimes. I can, as a student, see myself doing what another student does before I see myself doing what the professor's doing. So allow for that conversation to go. Allow them to grow and develop community amongst themselves. And that way they'll learn how to converse. And if there's this disagreement, you can always be a facilitator. And this is, of course, practice on how to do things in the real world. The rapport. This is when your presence supersedes your knowledge. It's not all about what you know, but it's about how you carry yourself as well. You want to make sure that you learn your students' names. Don't be embarrassed to ask about their names more than once. Some people are going to stick in the human psychology more than others because maybe they said something funny or somebody had a cool hairdo or whatever, you know. At the end of the day, if you don't remember somebody's name, make the effort. Hey, can you remind me your name? That way you allow the students to feel like you actually recognize their existence and they're more than a seat. And this is part of building that community. Extend your services, offer one-on-ones before or after class if there's students that you think are struggling. Office hours, make yourself available, email, Zoom, social media. I have I had a what's it called? A group chat with one of my classes. You know, I inserted myself later in the semester and I'm gonna do the same thing with the current class that I'm teaching. But basically the purpose of the group chat is, hey, what's going on? Did anybody see does anybody know today's assignment? XYZ, boom, that's it, keep it pushing. And so it's important to have these things already established. Be authentic, be memorable. Students, especially young students, are pretty much experts in reading authenticity. So don't come here trying to be something you're not, just be you. And if you have any personal interests, I definitely encourage for you to include that in your teaching, whether it's music, acting, singing, things of that nature, and lead through consistency. Be unchanging in your efforts and you'll earn the trust of students. Hard work beats talent when the talent don't work hard. You could be as intelligent and scholarly as possible, but you still gotta put in that work. Orientation, the art of learning how to learn. Not everybody learns the same. Some people are more visual learners, others artistic, others interactive, and some just like to listen. Create a fusion of all of this, right? Because at the end of the day, there's too many students in the classroom to even begin with. Once you touch 15, 20 people, you're not going to be able to cater to everybody's needs. So try to blend everything and try to maximize the potential of teaching your lessons. Make sure that you ask your students, what do you want to be included in the class? If they want guest speakers, if they want documentaries, films, be open to that. You know what I'm saying? And don't be afraid to admit you don't have all the answers. Sometimes you might have to ask the students, hey, what do you guys think? Is what I'm doing working? At the end of the day, they're going to be honest and they're going to let you know. And then from there, you can just move forward. Follow up with your students. Make sure to check in on the temperature of the class, reinforce what has already been established thus far, continue providing reassurance and validation, and establish key markers. So basically, you want to reiterate certain points like dates, due dates, deadlines. You know, if somebody feels like they're going to submit their assignment late, you know, hey, remember, you can always talk to me and I can give you a little grace period of a day, 2 days, whatever. Follow up, right? Establish key markers. So whether it's a statistic, a specific statistic or case, make that a bullet point for people to remember. So me, I teach corrections, for example. One number that I want students to remember is how many people are incarcerated any given day. That's 2.3 million people. So that's a number that's going to keep coming up. Regardless of anything else that I teach, that's a number that students should generally be familiar with. Test the students by asking them, what are these questions? Or asking them about these markers. So if I have a class next week, I'm going to ask, hey, how many people are incarcerated in the US? Oh, okay, 2.3. Yeah, that's right. This will operate as reinforcement and be a sample of proof that they are learning. And then this is the good part right here. So, and guys, I know I have like a 10-minute kind of leeway. I'm going to focus a little bit on this point and the next point, and then I'm going to fly right through and then try to finish so we could get into the breakout rooms. But this right here is the nitty gritty right here, where we really want to crunch this down, right? This is what we was waiting for. This is the chuleta to the rice and beans right here. We ready, right? Oh man, it's so good. Throw some adobo on it, bam, we ready. So you don't want to miss the forest for the trees. You don't want to focus on specific things and then you miss the overall important details and information. And what I mean by this is you want to set the groundwork. Before we get into quote unquote woke conversations, the foundation must already be established, right? So basically you have your different topics throughout the semester, obviously sprinkling the statistics, talking about the different realities, like throughout the course, you know, like for example, in my last semester course, when the George Floyd situation popped up, we were already talking about, you know, racial inequality through arrests and incarceration and things of that nature. So once that came up in the class, we didn't even have to, it was part of the class already, because we already established that that's going to be part of the class, talking about this. So you want to set the tone with the students early on. So going over your syllabus, the course overview, etc. There should be no surprises for your students. They already know the vibes. That's pretty much straightforward right there. Continue to establish key markers. So basically what we talked about before with statistics and themes and trends. You know, keep applying that pressure. Pressure makes diamonds. Not that you want to stress anybody out, but just keep emphasizing certain points. And then, of course, you want to empower your students through their assignments. The best way to learn is if you're actually interested in what you're learning, right? You want to create assignments that interest your students. So this could be, for example, allowing room for assignments to be fun and creative, allow opportunities for them to form autonomy without risking their own grades. So giving them options. Me, in a regular semester, I would have maybe 20 plus reflections or 20 plus topics. By the end of the semester, we have the final presentation and final paper, but we also have reflections. Out of all the reflections, they only have to submit me 10 and only 10 of whichever they prefer. So you pick a topic that you want to write about and that's it. You talk about it. So you don't have to do specific reflections that I tell you to do. You can pick which ones you want to do. You have a sense of control over your own educational experience. And then at the same time, you're still learning. And then, of course, this is important right here, too. You want to consider zero-cost curriculum, open educational resources. It's very difficult to preach social justice when your students cannot afford their books, okay? So we got to keep these things into consideration when getting into conversations of social justice. If we're going to preach it, we got to live it, too. Work with your school library on developing these curriculums. Take the time to comb through material as well online and see what can fit in your syllabus or curriculum. Test taking versus other assignments. Now, I'm not saying test taking is bad, but historically, especially for college entry exams, it has been discriminatory. SAT exams were created by the same individuals or the same people that created the IQ exam, and the IQ exam in the US was created as a form of showing white supremacy over Black communities, because the white communities had access to educational resources that the Black communities didn't have, and the tests were written in a way to cater to that. So of course the Black community had lower IQ scores just out of default of not having these resources. So you want to be sure that when you're considering other forms of assessment, that you're, and testing being included as one of those, that you're not reintroducing trauma, because a lot of times, and I can speak from personal experience too, when you come out of high school and you're told you got to take the SAT, you're already not even a good test taker in a lot of cases in the Black and brown community. So if you don't do good in the SATs, you're probably not going to get accepted to the dream school or the top school. You probably go to community college or a state university in a lot of times. So you want to consider whether testing makes sense. If you do go the route of providing tests, just make sure there's proper parameters. So maybe an open book test, or maybe not allowing the test to be worth so much of the grade and things of that nature. And at the end of the day, you want to be proactive. It's unfortunate to say, but don't wait for another George Floyd situation to happen in order to talk about social justice. You want to include all of this as much as possible in your course, whether it's somehow, some way you can infuse it in there. Be persistent in talking about social justice, and when another situation arises, they already know. And these are forms of how students have done assignments. So for my final presentation, you can do it as a PowerPoint presentation. You could do a rap. You could do many other things. But some of my students have actually come up with like a Jeopardy game, for example. So they'll create 5 different topics, and then each topic has points. You click on one of the points, it takes you to a question. Once it provides you the question, for example, name the 5 individuals who served 10 plus years for rape and attempted murder, but were all found innocent. The Central Park 5 right here. On the bottom right, there's a house. The student clicks on that house, and it would link them back to the original table. And then, of course, if you click on something else, it would take you to another topic. Now, another way that you could explore making assignments fun is by using social media. So maybe making an assignment saying, okay, search up hashtag George Floyd or hashtag social justice and write me a 3-paragraph essay on what you find on Instagram, you know, and then that way you can create an assignment that infuses the interests of the students, because students are going to use Instagram for free anyways. But you can make it into an assignment where they already do this for free. So why not make an assignment where it just becomes easy for them? And of course, they could search up pages and things of that nature. Now, right here, this is where we get into the woke dialogue, right? Some truths are just too true. And I learned that quote from watching the movie Kill the Messenger. And that movie had to do with Gary Webb, who was actually the San Jose reporter that, well, he was a reporter from California that he brought to light that the CIA was knowingly allowing Nicaraguan cartel individuals to smuggle drugs into the United States. And that kind of helped spark the whole drug crack epidemic and crack era of the 80s and things of that nature. So, you know, he ended up getting shot 2 times in the head, and it was ruled a suicide. That's the kind of woke dialogues that we would get into, where it's like, okay, maybe this isn't something we talk about in class on a regular, but if it does come up, we will discuss it. Here we could see some statistics. You know, people of color are just more times incarcerated than people from the white community. This is true of Black men and Latino men compared to white men, and the same thing for Black women and Latina women compared to white women. Now, you can see that 1 in every 3 Black men will see incarceration at some point, but even more appalling to me is that 1 in every 18 Black women, that's only one number different than 1 in 17 white men. So it kind of tells you the dynamic of our overall system. The red here represents how many people see solitary confinement from specific race groups, and the black line is how many people from that race group are in prison, period. We can see that both for the Black and Hispanic community, people from those communities are more likely to see solitary confinement once incarcerated than the white community. And one thing about solitary confinement that the United Nations came out and put to light is that when you're in solitary confinement for a week or more, automatically that's considered a form of torture, similar to waterboarding like in the third world country. Now, the average time that somebody spends in solitary confinement based off these statistics is usually a month or more, all right? 1 month to 3 months, that's usually on average, but you have people spending 3 to 6 months, 6 months to a year to 3 years, and even longer than that. And so automatically, if you're coming from solitary confinement, what rehabilitation has been given to you, and what opportunities are you going to be expecting once you come out if you're all mentally messed up? This right here is an overhead diagram of Eastern State Penitentiary. Now, it's very interesting that this image was actually created because Eastern State Penitentiary is one of the older facilities here in the United States, but then they did an overhead image of what a slave ship looked like. I'm not saying that the dimensions and designs were based off of a slave ship, but all I'm saying is it looks very familiar. And so it's kind of what they say, like birds of a feather flock together. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what it was, because as we talk about in class, the 13th Amendment says that that slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist in the U.S. except under which somebody has been convicted. And so basically the Constitution acknowledges that slavery exists, but in the form of mass incarceration. So this right here, this is an image of Rikers Island. And this right here is an image of Queensbridge housing projects here in New York City. They look both pretty much the same from an overhead view. So imagine if you grow up in the housing projects, you're already being institutionalized. You're already being surrounded by elements that are going to remind you of what prison is going to be. And you haven't even experienced prison yet. And so automatically it's creating a program that once you do get incarcerated, if that ends up happening to you, it's going to be an easy transition and it's going to be clockwork for you. You're already going to know the program and the system and things of that nature. And Black Lives Matter, end of discussion. Now, the reason why Black Lives Matter, we could get into different conversations and angles on this. The white conservative will say, just from what I see on Instagram and stuff like that, Black Lives Matter is a racist, Marxist agenda used to create division by liberals. I see on the Black Lives Matter page on Instagram, Black Lives Matter means, it means all lives matter. Wait, my bad, let me backtrack. Black Lives Matter means all lives don't matter until Black lives do. So you can't say all lives matter if Black lives continue to, suffer unequally compared to the white life. So once the Black life is treated the same as a white life, then you can say all lives matter. But somebody in the middle may say, is it possible to support human rights without being labeled political? That's where you have to create the distinction, because of course there's the organization Black Lives Matter, and there's a lot of speculation, they're funded by George Soros, and they contribute to Biden's campaign and stuff like that. So many things that people put out there. But at the end of the day, the overarching thought and idea that a Black life matters, that's unchanging, and that's always just going to be remaining true. And of course, you can always include in the conversation sports and athletics, which students gravitate towards naturally, whether it be sports or even music. In this image, Colin Kaepernick, years ago, he kneeled because he wanted to create awareness about police brutality. He was basically blackballed by the NFL, and he wasn't hired by no teams because he was considered unpatriotic, and some people even say he was communist. Years later, now that the George Floyd situation happened, leading up to it, he became Citizen of the Year by GQ. He managed to get a multi-million-dollar deal with Nike. NFL actually came out and admitted that they were wrong in ignoring the protests. And now this conversation, he could potentially be a Nobel Prize winner or nominee at the very least. I'm not sure what the factors would be in regards to that, but at the end of the day, it's a conversation. With music, for example, Tupac, he would say, first ship them dope, let them do the brothers, give them guns, step back, watch them kill each other. It's time to fight back, that's what Huey said. 2 shots in the dark, now Huey's dead, in reference to Huey P. Newton. We could see how music has a big influence in regards to social justice, and it happens naturally. So I know we're kind of getting short on time. I'm gonna do a quick rap for y'all, just for you to kind of, I don't know, let me see. Should I go all in? Should I start from the beginning? Is it like a 3-minute rap, or should I just do it halfway?
I think you should go for it. But you just tilt your screen down so we can see your full face.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotta spit these balls right here, no chocolate. Not messing. All right. My ancestors' wildest dreams come into fruition. My people come from places where we have rotten conditions. According to the bureaus, I'm supposed to be a statistic. Analytics call me criminal for my birth or existence. I'm out here with a blaze, some got a Glock for resistance. I'm just trying to stay safe from shock of going ballistic. The media try to ruin us with shots at our image. They don't show what's going to Harvard, only shots of ballistics. We on the front page, it look like a gun range. Call a brother thug strange, one white snort the cocaine. College data plug, man, then they model ball, man. We know to play sports, all state, me no cage. Quick to hook a brother up a Paris State grains. People who are higher up just want to stay green. Opioid and epidemic like the crack scene. They want us to stay folk or want us to stay fiends. All these politicians don't be walking, just be talking all this political Jargon cover up many a caucus. Never side with issues less in need of our support. Otherwise, we up in court. If he running for a caucus genocidal, then it turns suicidal. Living life on survival. Put their hand on the Bible. Office remains idle. Money remains the idle. Asking for an inch now. We never get a mile. Our people be sobbing. Youngest big. Our people be sobbing. All of this got me throbbing. Youngest began robbing. We got no Batman and Robin. They done killed all our heroes. Memory of them zero. Homie, this here is jungle and lion tigers is feral. School to prison pipeline, the pipe dreams, the bridge that got no bike lines cause you were pipe fiends. Homie, on this island, dudes be wildin', you might see a lot of stuff in dates. I'm reserved for the night scene. You'll see some brothers getting murdered up, homie stabbed up. You'll see some youngins getting jumped out, getting grabbed up, get sexually assaulted and get told to man up. And if you don't man up, then you might just hang up on everything. Everything is everything. Food calls your wedding ring. Promise your life's up for grabs, reinvented slavery. Get them while they're young, hyper suspension expulsions. Where to keep them ignorant, education give convulsions. Anytime they think about school, they think of trauma. Tears will share from the disappointment of their mama. Teacher once told them they'll never amount to nothing. That teacher up in the future faced a student, now a gunman. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reshare this.
Bars.
I appreciate y'all. I see the hand clap emojis. I'm gonna share the screen real quick, and then we're gonna get into the breakouts. I'm gonna just finish these last points, and then we'll be back on that tip. Slideshow. So thanks so much for hearing me out. Mentorship, it takes a village. So once you already establish a rapport and that you're knowledgeable about your field and you're incorporating social justice into this through the form of allowing assignments like social media or creating, allowing students to create a Jeopardy game or something of that nature. Basically, you can now start scouting for mentees. You want to be involved actively in the development of students and future leaders. So usually students who are proactive in school are already seeking a mentor, but propose the opportunity in general anyways. Anybody that's willing to take the opportunity, be open to them and let it happen organically. Create a regimen once it does happen. So basically a schedule that works best for you to follow up on the mentees. Even students who are on top of their game need motivating and encouragement. So always keep that in mind. Sometimes they're not going to reach out to you the way that they said they originally would, and that's okay. Set deadlines when assisting with recommendation letters, school applications, and etc. And be sporadic. Don't always depend on your schedule. Be random and check in when you got time. Students want somebody with the qualities of a parent while being a ROD, or ride or die. Things can quickly switch up, so don't allow frustration to creep in. So just be flexible for the most part. Operationalization, making it happen. Once you take somebody and you're mentoring them and things of that nature, see how they can get involved in any of these three formats: student government, Greek life, internships, whether paid or unpaid. When students get involved on campus, they generally have much better outcomes professionally, preparation for work they will do in the community and in future agencies, and basically have the opportunity to fall forward if skills are not adept yet. So it's a learning curve. If you still don't know how to, use Microsoft Excel to track data and stuff like that, it's fine. We're still in the learning phase and process. Helping them to establish networks and connections. So basically broadcast and post school and community events on Blackboard, Canvas, whatever platform you have to communicate with your students. Make sure that you keep them up to date with any events or happenings. Invite your students to meet faculty or employees familiar in the field of study that they're interested in. So at the end of the day, you want to just expose them to as many opportunities as possible. You want to establish their communication skills and allow them to just feel comfortable with being uncomfortable, so that at some point it basically becomes natural, just feeling this feeling, and then they know what to do for the most part. Employment search and higher education. So whether they want to go straight into the work field or they want to go for their master's or their PhD or Juris Doctorate or whatever, you can still support your students in their journey. So still be available, still be on top of them, just encouraging them. Guide your students towards the right direction, assisting them with their checklist. So kind of like when you go grocery shopping, you have your checklist. Hey, did you do your letter of recommendations? Do you have those? Do you have your transcripts? Are you meeting the deadlines, et cetera, et cetera? And commit to learning about opportunities students are unaware of that they can benefit from. So as an educator, we should be concerned with educating in the classroom and providing educational opportunities out of the classroom as well. So me, I'm gonna pay attention to all the emails that I get from the department, even though I'm getting spammed, because I understand that at some point, one of those emails is gonna be important information for my students. I'm gonna take that information, post it on Blackboard, post it on Canvas, and I'm gonna let them know, look, this opportunity is available, go for it. And accountability. And my brother's keeper, brothers, sisters keeper. This is from New Jack City. If you know the reference, you know. Basically, just following up, checking with your students on their overall progress. Ask the students if there's anything you need to do differently. Sometimes we don't have it all together. We're human as well as educators. So sometimes we can learn as well from the students the same way that we want the students to learn from us. If someone is better at guiding in a particular subject or item, you can refer the student to them. Don't let the ego get involved. This is all about building community, building social activists and leaders that are going to go out there and be effective. And what we don't need is any division in it when it's already a small group of people fighting for this in the first place. No acting brand new. So making sure, make sure to support your students, empower them, but humility is key. Always reminding them, because sometimes you might be feeling yourself, be like, oh, snap, yo, I did this. And you're proud for them, but you still want to make sure that they know that, yo, there's still stuff we got to do. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep getting to it. Provide a constant reminder and reassessment of goals and mission. So always just revisiting these things, because one thing about college that at least like a lot of our parents or older, individuals in our life might try to tell us is, oh, you need to know what you want to do, this and that. But we already know that's not the truth. I switched majors like 3 times when I was in undergrad. It's okay to not know what you want to do. If you get to a point where you know what you want to do, it's still good to go back, reassess those things, and make sure that you still feel the same way. Relationship will change, but this one should be for the better. So just making sure things move progressively and continue to be that dude/do that. The relationship will strengthen throughout time, continue to grow in respect and appreciation for one another. And at some point, talk about that wedding invite, JK. And so the overall process is this: the classroom leads to involvement, and involvement plus whatever was learned in the classroom leads to the overall careers, and hopefully it's careers where we can have impact in social justice, whether it be through education, whether it be through health, whether it be through criminal justice reform, because there's so many different fields that require social justice components in it. Even in the private sector, there's affinity groups and there's social, socially responsible initiatives and things of that nature. So you still have to talk social justice regardless of what you're teaching and the majors that your students are pursuing. And the legacy, how will you be remembered? For me, I would like to be remembered as a scholar, an educator, and most importantly, a real one, because to me, the other two don't even matter if I can't keep it a buck with my students and keep it official. And right here are some of the reviews students have left me, which I'm super grateful and blessed for. The one review that really, they all hit me hard, you know what I'm saying? Because I get humbled by it. But one that stood out to me here was a student said, I appreciate and respect this professor. He is available to his students, and you learn a lot in his class. He likes what he's doing, available to talk. He motivates his students, will push you to learn stuff and know basic things in policing, even if you don't want to learn. I taught a policing course before. Through the reading materials and assignments, you will definitely have was the required tools in criminal justice. He is a real OG. That one stood out to me because he mentioned a real OG, and like when you grow up in an urban community, in the hood, whatever, a OG stands for original gangster. That's the big homie. That's like the person that you want to be like, or the person that you follow. And to me, I'm not expecting any of this. All I want to do is provide quality information and to make sure that I can open up as many minds as possible. Do I fall short? Of course. There's definitely a lot that I can still learn and continue to grow and learn. But this is like an example of what stood out to me. And here, of course, I have my assessment from when I taught at Rutgers this past semester. My specific section is the one that's in between the red bars, and then they compared my section to other course sections, the level on the department wide basis, and even the department. And for the most part, students marked me very favorably, which I'm super blessed and thankful for as well. I even got graded in regards to how I handled the whole Corona situation, and they said that I was above average as well for that. And one thing that I really liked in this specific comment, Professor Cabrera challenged my intellectual progress because of how he taught. He wasn't just another professor who sat and lectured. He let us see how people of certain races were affected by crime. The course itself gave me a better look at how communities are affected when people are taken from their families for crimes that were not done by them. My intellectual growth on injustices have tripled because of this course and the teacher who taught me. So this is the type of feedback you want to see, that whatever it is that you're aiming to accomplish, that it gets accomplished. Of course, not everybody's going to feel the same. You're going to have different sentiments, but overall, you still want to get to that point. And at the very end, just to cap off the presentation, you want to have proactive action. You can't just be not racist anymore. That's not enough. You have to proactively be anti-racist, all right? You have to denounce it and be active and proactive in denouncing it. Silence creates an ecosystem for racism to thrive. You have to dispel it as soon as it makes itself notable. And are you about it? As an educator, you have to be as much about social justice as your students. So if your students come from a community of color, Black, Hispanic, whatever, and they were exposed to police brutality, of course they're going to be passionate about it because they were exposed to it, but you have to be passionate about it even if you never experienced it, because you know that this isn't right and your students suffer as a result of all of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into a breakout session. I know I kind of went over a little bit the time. What we can do is, how much time do we have left for the section?
We got 1/2 hour left.
Half an hour? Okay, so let's do 15 minutes for breakout, and then another 15 for the second breakout. So I'll be checking in with y'all so we can get into these sessions now. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about in the classroom, what is it that you would like to see in regards to social justice? How can you implement these things in your classroom? And what is it that you need in order for these things to be implemented? So I'll put this in the chat as well, just to assist you guys. So we'll break out into the.
Okay, I'm gonna open up the breakout rooms now.
So I was able to sneak into some of y'all breakout rooms and hear what you were discussing. I liked the conversations. There was a specific conversation going on before we came back over here. Is Know-How still present?
Yes.
Yes. Would you be able to share what you were sharing before we came back to this?
Sure. I'll summarize what I had been saying. I'm teaching a psychology research methods class, and I had a student, male, Latino, and he needed to express how he was feeling. And this is research methods, and we only have 5 weeks to get this, what we need to get done. It's a 5-minute class, and he needed to express himself. He was angry. He was sad. I think his projections kind of set the tone for the entire class. And so I didn't want to interrupt him, but I also wanted to kind of break that up because I didn't want everyone to go in feeling low and sad and angry. I needed to lift them up, but I needed to let him talk. So I wasn't going to interrupt him. He did, and then a lot of other students chimed in, and I felt a little bit powerless. And I'm from Los Angeles, California, raised in the heart of it, and so that's my home. I know I'm raised with all groups, right? So I felt like I should have known more. I should have been able to speak to what he needed because he was in my class growing up, right? Like he was my friend, and he still is my friend. And I thought, did I lose touch? Did something happen that I can't intervene here?
Real quick, so that we can maximize the remaining 15 minutes. what was the takeaway in regards to like what you think you need in regards to being able to, I guess, more effectively handle this kind of interaction?
I think I wasn't ready for it because we kind of took, had a little bit of a break, and then we've been away. And also these interaction online, you see faces, but you don't see whole body movements. You don't know what people are completely feeling. Hard to read them. A lot of students, I don't know if you noticed, that they put their head down, they have their caps on, they're not making eye contact. So I felt like I couldn't do anything, and I felt kind of powerless, and I felt like I wasn't helping him. That was a big takeaway. Like I felt, wow, I blew that.
And what's the support in one sentence or 1-2 sentences that you feel can reinforce you to get to where you need to get?
I feel maybe more skill set. I mean, I'm skilled in therapy. I'm skilled in so many other things. I thought that would have been a natural thing for me to just jump right in. But I guess I've never experienced this much of a challenge, because it is nationwide. It isn't just one individual experiencing one thing. It's multiple people feeling similar things in different degrees. I think that was the key. I didn't know how to deal with everybody at the same time.
All right. Let's get some of the input of other people as well, and we're gonna keep the responses to like 2 minutes per person, so that way we can get as many in the 15. I know I went over the time with the presentation a bit, so who can share what is it they feel they can provide in the classroom to better address social justice, and what are the supports that are needed for you to make this possible, if any?
These like accessible like scholarships, like for everyone. Like I feel like sometimes I don't know about scholarships like that. It's like once it comes to like enrolling to class, like it's too late for a scholarship. It's just like, you're all like busy with like dealing with life here, and it's like time to enroll, and then it's like you forget about scholarships, and they're there, but then they're like passed through.
Right. And you made a great point in the sense of talking about the financial circumstances of students, right? And you haven't been my student. I know that you're an excellent student. I think you got A's in my class, in both of my classes, right?
Yes.
And you always were involved in conversation and like very thoughtful interaction at that. So somebody who's doing the things that they need to do should be able to continue their education without any issues. And so, of course, as I've offered many times in our classes, you're always welcome to reach out to me and see how we can continue the conversation and how I can be of support to you. Same for everybody else. When your student expresses concerns with finances, it's important to pay attention to that, because a lot of times that, like in many cases, that can be the factor that keeps the growth from continuing. So Mel, you and I definitely gotta set an appointment and talk about scholarships, because there's definitely a bunch of opportunities, but we gonna make time for that. You heard?
All right. Yeah, I'll hit you up. I got you on the IG now.
Yes, sir. I see you running every day too, man.
Oh,
You
yeah.
ran from the Bronx all the way to Queens. I was like, no way. So like, this dude is like on that Hussein Bolt status, but respect, man. What are some other perspectives in regards to like what can you do to bring social justice in the classroom, like create awareness about it, and then what are the supports, whether as an educator or as a student, that you feel are needed? So Mel just provided a student perspective, which is definitely needed. But from an educator perspective, what do you guys think as well?
I see Professor Chi raised his hand.
Oh,
If you want to do that with it.
this is Linda Murray Jackson, Delaware State. I think we need to, I'm an administrator now. When I teach, though, I like to provide a safe space so that students can call me. I give out my cell phone number, although they know not to call before 9 a.m. or after 10 p.m. But, you know, it is that safe space and that feeling of this is someone I can talk to. As one student said, I'm gonna love you to death, but flunk you just the same. So you've got to do your work, but I'm gonna love you to death.
That's a fact. Those boundaries still have to be there, but I think that's what creates that tension for growth. You know, it's like a rubber band effect. You don't want to pull too much where it starts to break, but you know, tension is always healthy in proper amounts. What are some ways that social justice gets incorporated in that? Like, would you say it's like the mentorship component, where it's like you're providing that mentorship that they might not otherwise receive?
It's mentorship and it's open discussion. In one of the classes, one of the students who was white, it was after something happened, and I said, you know, you're here, and the best thing you can do for us is to go tell your family that we're not the monsters they think we are. And for the rest of you, keep loving on each other. Because when you have white students, when you're at an HBCU and you have white students, they're around blacks all the time, so they know how we are, and they're comfortable with us, and it's partially on them to let others know that we walk the same way, we talk the same way, we eat the same way, you know.
Yeah, and the reality is that this issue of racism, like, regardless of what a lot of people want to think, like, it can't be solved without help from the white community, because it's the white community predominantly where a lot of these issues are coming from. So it takes people or change agents from within the community itself to teach the next generation coming up from the community, hey, what they taught us in the past, that's not it. You know, people from this community are this way as opposed to how they were painted over here in XYZ. So it takes collaboration. And I always look at it like this. The narrative of Frederick Douglass is one of my favorite books ever. Frederick Douglass was under a white abolitionist. If there wasn't a William Lloyd Garrison, there is no Frederick Douglass, and that's just the bottom line. And Frederick Douglass ended up influencing every other civil rights activist after him. So there is room and there is need for people from the white community to step forward and, you know, be proactive in denouncing racism and things of that nature. How can we potentially include, let's say, hip hop or even social media in assignments and allowing students to learn social justice through that? Because these are things that are synonymous pretty much for students. Like, they do this for free. They on a daily basis, the average person is spending 2 hours on Instagram, and on a weekly basis, several hours listening to music. So how can we incorporate this into the conversation of addressing social justice in the classroom?
Can I say something?
Apologies. Could we give Professor Tigo first? His
yeah.
hand's been raised this whole time. Yeah, thank you so much.
All good. I'll be real quick. I think that what you can do is you can speak in their terms. And what I mean by their terms is that what matters, I think, is basic needs, okay? Notion of what a traditional student is and what I went to school to do, which was full-time, 15 units a semester, is not the reality that I teach, okay? I teach the mean unit load at my school, and I'm at CSU Dominguez Hills, around the corner from Compton, okay? And we're a part of the CSU system. The average mean unit load is 11. It has just gotten to 12. It's certainly not 15 units, so they're not finishing in 4, okay? Again, I would tell you, just based on the clear statistics, we've done a survey. I'm the PI on this survey, and you will see that 1 in 6 are housing insecure. 3 in 5 are food insecure, based off of a national model. And that's 50% higher than the CSU numbers. CSU numbers in total for the entire CSU. LA Times reported 10% homeless, okay? 40% food insecure. Those are the issues. Those are the issues that matter to these students. And you really want to raise the notion that this is not the old way of college, okay? And many of the people who are in the legislature, many of the people who are making the funding decisions for colleges, for universities, etc., are thinking, oh, it's just like when I went to school. And when I went to school, I I worked during the summer, and then I was able to pay for my tuition. No, you might pay for books today. And so those are the types of differences that we need to start to highlight. And this is where students can become active in terms of not just the national conversation. Listen, I'm looking for justice for Breonna Taylor, just like everybody else, okay? But I'm saying that you can also raise the issues that are right there at home for them as students.
Yeah, that's a fact. And addressing those needs, it's like, if you don't address those things, it's going to distract them from being able to get to the main thing, which is getting that knowledge and getting that education. So I'm definitely 1,000% on board with that, because that actually falls into what we talked about in regards to the definition of social justice, you know, wealth, opportunity, and privilege and stuff like that. Last question, because I know we're on 2 minutes left. Anybody in regards to a response on how you can incorporate hip hop or social media or just some other form or tactic outside of what's normal? Because the reason why I'm asking that more specifically is because that's something students already do for free. Again, so it's something that we do want to at least consider, like how can we incorporate that into the classroom and you know, make it easier for us to teach, because the students are going to gravitate towards it.
Can I talk? Is that okay? Okay. So I think it really speaks to what Professor T and also what you were saying, Professor Cabrera. So I think that the two most, at least the most popular ones right now, are like TikTok, Twitch, and Instagram. So I think that engaging those, and what you had mentioned something in your talk about, it just really stuck out to me, the active engagement portion of things. So I think like if you could do like issue a challenge for students, like TikTok challenges are huge. Like they'll do like a dance challenge or something and make it social justice themed. And then that gets them talking. And I can just from small personal experience, these past months or so, just engaging in active anti-racism work, I've found that although social media can be very much of an echo chamber, I've also seen so many people, especially white people, who previously might have said like the all lives matter or whatever, that the fact that they were able to go back and read things, and it was something that was slowly kind of coming into their consciousness. And I actually have seen people like, yeah, I get it now, like this. And so it's like those seeds have been planted. So I think it's a really powerful tool to use, and you have to do it in a way where you're compassionate, but at the same time, where you're like reaching people where they're at, kind of like what you had said. So I would suggest TikTok, because I have a 16-year-old sister and she's obsessed with it. So
that's a fact. And
yeah.
I think that's excellent, you know, because TikTok, apart from Instagram, is not, I think TikTok, if anything, has surpassed Instagram at this point. And at the end of the day, you know, you can make learning fun. It doesn't have to be just the old guard of, you know, sitting in a desk and learning, and this, like, make it interesting. The attention span today is no longer as long as what it was even 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Instagram, you can upload 1-minute videos and then that's it, you keep it pushing. That's how students think. You have to adjust to this as well, and be able to make it interesting. And so, look, it's been a pleasure. I don't want to go over the time because I'm respectful of it, but if you guys want to connect, I put my email and my Instagram info on there. I'm going to put it up again. I could share the screen, but I would rather, you know, be sharing faces right now. Is my email, and the other is my Instagram. Oh man, I'm getting direct messages, so it's like it kind of ends up getting sent to individuals.
Yeah, copied and paste. Yeah, that was me. That was my fault.
That's all good.
Thank you all for attending. Thanks for being here. Abstractlifestyle.net, also website, amazing. This was probably my favorite session of the. Oh, I probably shouldn't say that on video because I've been to so many. Honestly, it was my favorite session of the conference. Thank you.
Man,
Really
listen,
appreciate it.
I appreciate all of y'all. I appreciate the staff, you know, super supportive, helping me out. Honestly, I never used breakout sessions before this, so you guys have taught me something as well. And I think it,
Maya.
you know, it was pretty fluid. And then thank you to all the educators, to all the students that came through. My students, y'all already know, yeah, you know the vibes. And everybody else, you know, if you want to connect, I'm available. We could continue the conversation through Zoom, social media, or phone call. So definitely everybody stay safe, stay corona free, and hopefully we can implement some of these practices into our schoolwork.